Hey, good morning, people. Good to be with you again. We're talking about fighting the good fight. Now, I don't want to overstate a few things by talking for too long on this particular subject, but I've got to tell you, as I just read and as I think, there's so much more that I hope you'll bear with me as we continue to contemplate. I think it comes back to the fact that God is a warrior God. That means God is a God who's not afraid of a good fight. That our God is a God who will stand on behalf of good and righteousness, and he will stand with his people to stand against and to fight against evil. When you think of God, so many people think of this passive God who's sitting far away, watching us from a distance and shaking his head as we continue to mess up and do things wrong. But I read in the scriptures that we have a completely opposite God. We have a God who's not afraid to stand with us, to fight alongside us against evil. And sometimes he even fights for us. Sometimes he'll say, you stand aside here, young man, and I will handle this thing. We're going to look at that this coming week. Now, as I read, as the Bible in 1 Samuel chapter 18, we have a God standing and fighting a really good fight through David, who stood in front of Goliath. And we get a wonderful picture of this warrior God as it comes out of David's mouth, where he declares to Goliath, he said, you don't want to mess with me, big guy, because I have the God of all heaven on my side. Listen as I read to you what David said to Goliath. He said this. He said, David said to the Philistines, you come against me, the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, Jehovah Sabaoth, the Lord of the armies of heaven, whom you have defied today. David was ready to stand and to defend the name of God against this big Philistine. God is the God of the armies of heaven. You don't have armies if you're not preparing for war. And we get this wonderful picture of a powerful God, a righteous God, a holy God, who stands on behalf of good and righteousness to defend us, his children, against evil. I don't mind going to war when I know that God is in my corner. And when David looked against Goliath, and Goliath said, what entitles you to fight me? David said, well, just check who's in my corner over here. The God of the armies of heaven. Now, as you read, especially the Old Testament, New Testament too, about how those fights took place, and the God Almighty, the God Jehovah Sabaoth, was the one who won the victory. He just happened to fight it through David. Now, people, let me say this. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Oh, it's a great story. And we tend to relegate this great story to the realm of great men like David. But I'm going to tell you, people, that same God who stood with David, that same God who has the armies of heaven on David's side, does the same thing for us today. I need you to get a picture of this powerful warrior God, a God whom no one can stand against. You don't want to mess with him because he is Jehovah Sabaoth, the God of the armies of heaven. If we could just get a picture of that, if we could have our spiritual eyes open to see God like that, and maybe that could change the way that we think about life and all the petty little enemies that we have when we know who's in our corner. I want you to get a picture of that before we move on tomorrow to talk about other aspects of what it means to have a God just like that. Go and have a good day. And just remember, people, that he's in your corner. He's fighting with you, not against you. And sometimes he even fights for you completely. I'm looking forward to sharing those thoughts with you in the coming couple of days. Go and have a fantastic day today, people. God bless you, man.